Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here with the November 2022 monthly astrological preview video. So get cozy. This is going to be a crazy month, I'll tell you right now, but it's going to be easy to navigate. So let's start off with November 1st. November starts off with a major theme that's going to run through about half to 2/3 of it. And that theme is the fact that right now the Sun, Venus, and Mercury are basically all traveling through the sky together in Scorpio. So, on one hand, that's good. Mercury and Venus are known as the inner planets. So it's time to do a lot of inner work. Of course, Scorpio is the sign of transformation. So now is a good time to go within and change the parts of yourself that need changed to wrap up this calendar year and set the stage for 2023. Now, besides that triplicity that's moving through the sky right now, until the 12th, all of that activity is going to be forming the aspect known as a square to Saturn in Aquarius. Now, here's the thing. For the first half of the month, the moon comes into play here because it moves faster than those other three bodies. So for the 1st through the 12th, we have that triplicity of the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius. But a few times this month, the moon will come along and activate that in a very, shall we say, challenging way. First of all, the aspect of a square is one that is growth opportunities, challenges, and problems. So, right off the bat, when we keep in mind that Saturn is all about karma and long term success and patience and stability, and Aquarius is the sign of groups and one of the signs of society in the zodiac, then what we see here is that if you take the first 12 days of November to focus on internal change, that might not harmonize well or easily with society at large. Now, I realize a lot of you are going to laugh at that and say, I don't give a fuck. And that's your business. And that works if that's where you're coming from. But keep in mind, no person is an island. We need society as much as society needs us. And it's not that we need society as the whole, it's that we need other people. We can't do anything in life almost without working with someone else. So the challenges for the first 12 days of November all have to do with your inner transformation and how you improve your relationship with the greater world. Now, on the 4th, the moon shifts over to Pisces and it joins the two ruling planets of Pisces, Neptune and Jupiter there. And all of this for the 4th and the 5th is happening at the final degree of Pisces. So in astrology, the final degree, the 29th degree, is known as the anaretic degree. And whenever there's a planet placed there or close to there, it means there is a cycle that is coming to a conclusion and an ending, and it's now time to embrace something new. So, of course, it's like eating a meal. Now is the time that the food has been eaten, and now it's time to clean up the dishes. So it's very similar here. Since all of this activity is occurring in Pisces, then we find the central concepts that are going to come to the surface are emotions, your psychic skills. So if you feel like you've been a dabbler for a while, now is the time to take the big plunge into something bigger. If you've already been doing something bigger, you might want to consider seeing how you can shift your mind in line with where you're at rather than where you were when you developed certain perspectives in the first place. Now, Pisces is a sign that is extremely sensitive to energy. And when I was younger, I thought that was a bad thing because to me, it inferred crying at the drop of the hat. But that's not necessarily the case. During this transit on the 4th and the 5th, you may find that you pick up on energy more than you do other times. But now the difference is, how do you respond? Do you respond in the same way that you've always responded and therefore you're setting yourself up to get the same results? Or are you approaching things from a different perspective based on experience and wisdom? Huge difference here. In this way, these 2 days, the 4th and the 5th, may feel like a spiritual initiation or the initiatic process of emotions and the emotional body. Now, also on the 4th, we've got all of that activity in Pisces squaring the Mars retrograde in Gemini. So remember what I just said about squares, and what this means is that as Mars continues to go through the sign of personal communication, it's going to wreak some havoc for most of November. And we'll talk about Mars in a broad sense at the end of the video. But in short, one of the ways you can interpret this is people speaking without thinking, triggering your emotions because of the increased sensitivity from Pisces. Or maybe you're feeling a lot of deep, profound emotions, but you can't find the words for them. There's a few different ways to interpret this, but the key to navigating it safely is to always look within. Always look within first and foremost when solving all of your problems to see if you can do something about the problem before you or not. Now, it's a different story if you see that you can do something about it and you choose not to. That's a conversation for another time. But whenever something is out of order in our life, we have to go within and fix that. So on the 5th, we've got that triplicity in Scorpio of the Sun, Venus, and Mercury opposing the North Node and Uranus in Taurus. And that's going to last through the 9th. So we've talked about the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in Scorpio already. An opposition is a tension-based aspect. And when this one is present, it tells us that while you're doing all of this internal transformation, it might cause you to rethink where you're going spiritually, or it may put you more in your head than you should be. And then the unexpected happens, having to do with the physical world. So, in other words, daydreaming while driving leads to a speeding ticket. Or maybe you're doing so much work on internal transformation that you're not seeing loved ones around you need your help. So you're oblivious to it and thereby inadvertently cause pain. So there's a few different ways to interpret it. And that's why I can't give you a black, white, this is how it is. But definitely on the 5th, pay attention to what you're doing and what's going on around you. And of course, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Also on the 5th, we have the moon conjunct Chiron in Aries. The moon, of course, is emotions and our psychic self. The Chiron is the planet of the wound and the wounded healer. And when it's in Aries, it's a wounded sense of self or a wounded sense of being. The good news is Chiron is retrograde right now. So when the moon comes along and conjuncts it on the 5th, you may find now you get emotionally motivated to do the healing you have to do. This healing has to do with your self-esteem, self-value, self-worth, self-confidence, self-love, self-respect, strength of ego. I like that because it does come along with the moon coming into the picture. It does come along and say your sense of being is going to get hit during this time. So you can expect those kind of challenges on the 4th and 5th. But then the fact that Chiron's retrograde says, well, now you just got to look at what still needs healed within you. What are you going to do about it? Because it can't keep going on. Now, also on the 5th, we've got Venus in Scorpio, the front, almost the front end of that triplicity, squaring Saturn in Aquarius. So you might find it wise to watch your spending when you're out with friends. You might find it wise to take a second look at your financial investments, especially if they have to do with nonprofit organizations and humanitarian endeavors. So far up to this month, I put a lot of emphasis on Scorpio being a sign of personal transformation, but it should also be remembered that Scorpio is one of the signs of business and shared resources. So you may go through most of November saying, Bill, I haven't done any personal transformation, but damn, my professional life has been a train wreck. It could be that. Or it could fluctuate back and forth depending on who you are, where you're at in your life's journey, and what your goals in front of you are. So here again, there's a couple of different things to keep in mind with Scorpio. It's personal transformation, but it's also business, shared resources, death, inheritances, legacies. And this becomes glaringly obvious on the 5th when Venus squares Saturn. Venus squares Saturn says there might be challenges when it comes to not only spending money in groups of friends and the things that I just talked about, but there could also be challenges in your love life. It could have to do with commitment issues. It could also have to do with deciding whether you're going to do what's best for you or you're going to do what's best for everyone. And there is a correct answer there. I don't think I have to say it. Moving on, we get to the 8th, so we get a couple of days there where things kind of back off a little bit. And on the 8th, we have the full moon eclipse, and it is astrological Samhain in the northern hemisphere. So, well, first of all, happy Samhain. For those of you that are not familiar with Samhain, Samhain is an ancient festival to honor the dead. It's an ancient festival when the spirits walk between the worlds a little bit more than they do at other times of the year. And if you are in the southern hemisphere, this is the time of Beltane, so the veil is equally thin now, and therein lies an important lesson, which is, it's not just Samhain when the veil between the worlds is the thinnest, it's also Walpurgisnacht and Beltane. So regardless of what hemisphere you're in, the fact of the matter is the spirits are going to be closer to you during this time. And even if you don't believe in spirits, then one of the ways you can look at this is that memories of loved ones who have now departed flood your mind a little bit more than most. Or it's a good time to maybe visit a cemetery or a graveyard to honor the tombstones and the memories of those dearly beloved ones in spirit. Now, this full moon eclipse is happening on the Scorpio-Taurus axis, and what that tells us is you might feel stretched thin between doing what's comfortable versus doing what you need to do for your spiritual and personal development. You may find that now is a good time to start being mindful of who you share your plans with and why. You know, this is the 4th power of the Sphinx that Eliphas Levi talked about in the middle to early part of the 19th century. And the 4th power of the Sphinx means to conceal, which basically means don't tell anybody what you're doing until you've done it. Because people might have good intentions and still throw negative energy your way. Or people might say they're nice to your face and talk shit about you behind your back. Now, also keep in mind that earlier in the month we talked about the north node of the moon and Uranus being in Taurus, and they kind of come up here. The north node of the moon is a hypothetical point in space, and it basically comes along to remind us of where we're growing spiritually. So don't be surprised if this full moon triggers certain aspects of your spiritual path into existence, or maybe brings your consciousness and awareness to them. But regardless of how it plays out, it's a pretty good chance that after that full moon, you're probably not going to be the same again, whether it is internal or external life changes that have happened. On the 9th, we've got that triplicity in Scorpio uh, squaring Saturn in Aquarius again, and it's going to continue through the 12th. And you see how this is cyclical? I mentioned this with November 1st, and now I mention it here. And all of this activity on the 9th just kind of brings things back to center. So you may find that November starts off one particular direction in one way. You get sidelined and sidetracked with everything between the 1st and the full moon. But then right there on the 9th, you're picking the themes up that you started the month with. So this kind of cycle of starting something, getting distracted, or having to address other matters, and then coming back to what you started earlier in the month is a common theme for most of November. So it might feel like one step forward, two steps back. It might feel like you're treading water, but you're really not. You're just dealing with a lot. And that is one of the monikers of Scorpio, which is intensity. And I have not found a sign in the zodiac, and I've been looking for a long time, that's as intense as Scorpio. The other fixed signs come close. Don't get me wrong, they're all fixed. So Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, they're all focused, they're all fixed, they're all set in their ways. The difference is Scorpio's more intense than all of them. But just like Scorpio's more intense than all of them, each one of those has something they do better than Scorpio. So I'm not elevating Scorpio here. I'm just saying that's one of its keywords is intensity. And sometimes that presents problems because not everybody can handle the intensity of a Scorpio. Sometimes people think they can handle it and then they get burnt out along the way. And the Scorpio or Scorpio heavy person should not feel bad about that. Why? You tried, didn't work. We just move on to the next phase of life. No biggie. And people might say, well, damn, Bill, that's cold. Well, guess what? That's another trait of Scorpio. Detachment. Detaching away from everything and focusing on the execution of their will if they're embracing the occult trait of Scorpio. Now we get a day of quiet with the 10th. On the 11th, we get to the moon conjunct the Mars retrograde in Gemini. So watch for an opportunity to get a deeper look at yourself. And also on that day, we've got Venus in Scorpio sextiling Saturn in Aquarius and trining Neptune in Pisces. Sextiles are easy flowing, positive, talent-driven aspects. So when I say you've got Venus sextiling Saturn, that means now is a good time to make the commitments in the romantic relationship. Now is a good time that you'll find it will be easier to work with society on average. If you've been working hard on getting your life a certain way, now is the time where things might click together for you in context of the bigger picture. The trine to Neptune and Pisces tells us that the more you listen to your intuition and your sixth sense, the easier things are going to come. Just make sure you're seeing everything clearly. On the 12th, we've got that Scorpio triplicity trining Jupiter and Neptune, both retrograde in Pisces, and this will be lasting through the 22nd. So this is a good time to start your own initiation process. An initiation is when we go from one state of being to a higher, newer level. And this is one of the better times in the whole year, but specifically at the end of this calendar year, in which you might find it wise and good to initiate yourself in something new, start something new, or take what you know and apply it in new, different, more complex, and better ways. The 13th and the 14th, we have the moon in Cancer trining the triplicity in Scorpio and the two planets in Pisces. So this continues the theme of what I was just talking about that started on the 12th for initiation, spiritual growth, and all things occult and psychic. Now, on the 15th and 16th, we have the moon in Leo opposing Saturn in Aquarius. And whenever you have the moon opposing Saturn, it means that there is an internal tension in the air between doing what emotionally feels good and doing what is intellectually and maturely correct. So you might find that the 15th and the 16th, more the 16th than the 15th, but that both of those days kind of make you look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're really doing the smart, mature thing, or if you are engaged too much in your immaturity and your emotions. Now, we all know that an absolute solution here is not what is being sought. This is not a time to say, well, fuck maturity, I'm just going to do what feels good. And it's also not a good time to say, well, fuck the emotions, I'm going to do everything mature. The whole point of this aspect is to find a healthy balance between the two. So do mature things, but have fun doing them. Or see how you can take what you do for fun and use it to better your life in a new and different way. The 16th is a little bit heavier for that duality because on that day, we've also got the moon in Leo squaring that Scorpio triplicity, and then you still have the Aquarius action. So that turns into a fixed sign T-square, which is all about pressure, all about challenges, all about making you change what you're doing due to unexpected things that are going on. So we do have a little blip in our radar here, the 13th through the 17th, where things are going to get shaky. This is why I said in the 2 days before, now's a good time for spiritual initiation or initiation in any life area. You start it then, and then immediately on these days right after, you get hit right out the gate with a lot of challenges. So it may seem like you're cursed, it may seem like things are falling apart, but in reality, it's just spirit stepping in and saying, oh, you put that initiation in motion, and now here's step one. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what if I don't do anything initiatic? Okay, you're still going to get hit with those challenges with the fixed sign T-square in the few days after that water grand trine. So, no, you don't have to initiate, but you're still going to get the challenges. It's kind of fun how that works, isn't it? On the 16th, we also have Venus moving into Sagittarius. So Venus is the sign of love, money, creativity, beauty, artistic appreciation, all things related to the incarnated goddess energy. And Sagittarius is a sign of freedom seeking, truth speaking, traveling, wandering, spirituality as opposed to religion. So whenever Venus moves into Sagittarius, you might feel a desire or a longing for freedom within a romantic relationship, or depending on your chart, maybe the freedom's there and you want to bring it to a close, or maybe you and your partner or partners are not on the same page for this and it becomes glaringly obvious. Now, from a more mundane perspective, Venus in Sagittarius tells us that for the whole transit, it's a good time to review your investments, specifically foreign ones you might have, or any kind of dealings where your money is tied up with foreign influences and foreign cultures. And that if you do it now, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache in the future. On the 17th, the very next day, we have the moon in Virgo. squaring Mercury and Venus in Sagittarius. And yes, that does mean that Mercury enters Venus basically a day at, or Mercury enters Venus? Yeah, Bill, drink more coffee. Mercury enters Sagittarius a day after Venus. So what that means is the 15th through the 17th might bring all kind of hang-ups having to do with Venus and Mercury. Now, and that's going to be real obvious on the 17th. Now, Mercury is the planet of communication and adaptability, specifically personal communication. And according to traditional astrologers, it's not necessarily seen in a good place when it's in Sagittarius, because Mercury is more the planet of the diplomat and saying things between the lines in conversation and innuendos and segues and all of those fun things. Whereas Sagittarius is very direct and very in your face. It's the show me the money. It's the I don't give a shit about your diplomacy. Here's the issue. Quit talking to me sideways. Let's hit it directly in the face. So you can see how some people can say those energies are not compatible. Personally, I think they're compatible just fine. If you have to use diplomacy in your daily life, that's fine. But if you're a diplomat, you've also got to be able to know when to put the diplomacy aside and just be a straight talker. And that's what Sagittarius forces, which is always a good thing. If you ever want a Sagittarian or somebody with heavy Sagittarius in their chart to do something, first thing you do is you tell them they can't do it and watch them do it purely out of spite, and they will succeed better than you might have hoped for. On the 18th, we have that moon in Virgo now squaring the Mars retrograde in Gemini and opposing Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces, which means now we have a mutable sign T-square. So just about a week ago, we had a fixed sign T-square. Now we have a mutable sign T-square. So you're still going to get the challenges. You're still going to get the start-stops. You're still going to get the problems. But now they're going to be easier to work with. Whereas with the fixed sign, they're a little bit tougher. The 19th, we have Venus and Mercury conjunct in Sagittarius and sextiling the moon in Libra. Remember what we said earlier about sextiles being gently flowing positive aspects? So what this means is, you know how earlier in the month you might not have been able to find the words to convey what you were feeling or emoting? Well, now here on the 19th, you'll find the words. So make sure you watch this video, not just at the beginning of the month, but also periodically throughout. As you get to this point, it might save some stress on the front end of November. So if you're going through something the beginning of November and you can't put words for it and you hear me say that, then you know to circle back to those topics right around the 19th, the 20th, and the 21st. Speaking of the 20th and 21st, we have a grand trine in air. We have Saturn in Aquarius, trining the moon in Libra, trining the Mars retrograde in Gemini. Now, grand trines are aspect patterns that are present when we have an abundance of a certain element, and therefore the traits of that grand trine are more present. So, for example, if someone has a grand trine of air in their natal chart, it means they spend a lot of time in their heads. They can probably outthink you, but the danger is they can also get lost in their head, never to come out again. So this is kind of a dangerous aspect. Watch for inspiration during this time. Now's a good time to talk to people. Now's a good time to network. Now's a good time to communicate. But put extra emphasis on staying grounded during this time. You can have the best ideas and the fucking cosmos going through your head, but if you can't bring them down to physical results, then they don't really do you any good, do they? On the heels of that grand trine in air, on the 22nd, the sun moves into Sagittarius. So now the sun joins Mercury and Venus. So for the 20th through the 23rd, there might be some shakeups having to do with travel or foreign influences, foreign cultures. There might be problems with investments too, so watch out for those. So you can see how it was a good opportunity to address investments a little bit earlier in the month. This is basically just saying keep your foot on the pedal until the beginning of December. Also on the 22nd, we have the moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius, and this brings us echoes of what we talked about earlier in this video and earlier in the month about all of that triplicity periodically squaring Saturn in Aquarius. So I don't see any reason to go into it here. You've got the earlier footage to refer to. On the 23rd, we've got the new moon in Sagittarius, and we also have Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius, so this is going to be an especially powerful new moon. It's going to be all about new beginnings of honesty. There's really two ways to handle that: internal honesty and external honesty. So being honest with yourself. So you may find that with this new moon, it's a good time to, as the spirit Luceros told me many years ago, figure out how to run through the path naked, which is basically very, shall we say, graphic image of finding your spiritual path, owning it, working hard on it, not hiding it, but not throwing it in other people's faces either. You know, those myths of the burning times in witchcraft killing 9 million over the span of several centuries, and we know they're myths now. We know that's not true, but that idea has left an indelible mark on the psyche of many practitioners today, to where many people say that they are in the broom closet. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this. When I was younger, I was like, fuck it, don't even worry about it. But now as I've gotten older, I see there is an appropriate time and place to be discreet with it. But being discreet does not mean hiding in the closet. So you might find that this is a good time for spiritual declaration, whether it's just to yourself because of extenuating circumstances, or whether it's a declaration to the world at large. That's up to you. But I do want you to know that any kind of hesitancy you might have in sharing this aspect of your spiritual path with people, that might be distorted. So you might want to take a second look at it during this time. Now, this also means that travel, especially long distance travel, may go one of two ways with no in between. The travel may go nice and smooth and everything goes well, or it might be a clusterfuck. It's only going to last a few days. That's the good news. On the 24th, we have the Sun in Sagittarius, as well as Mercury and Venus in Sagittarius, sextiling Saturn in Aquarius again. You see the repeated theme. And on that day, we also have a trine of Mercury, Venus, and the Sun in Sagittarius to Chiron retrograde in Aries. I like this because it's a good time for healing. It's a good time to say, now that I've got everything together spiritually, now I can start healing myself, removing such topics of shame and guilt or unworthiness. Now's a good time to get in with your psyche and really work with that. Now, I just talked about the 24th, but I'm going to backtrack to the 23rd, because the 23rd through the 25th, Jupiter is stationing direct in Pisces, meaning that it is slowly moving from retrograde to direct motion. And what this means is there might be spiritual problems brought up. You might go through the initiatic process that we talked about earlier in the month, put it into practice here right around the time of this new moon, and then Jupiter comes along when it's stationing and says, hold on, you forgot this. Oh, what about this? Hey, people are asking you about this. How are you going to respond? So it's more like a cleanup period. But it also means Spend your money carefully on things that you have an emotional connection with. Also, be careful when spending your money if you're upset. You know, I'm all for retail therapy, but I also know I got limits there. Just because I like using retail therapy sometime doesn't mean I'm going to go out and blow 60 grand on a car. Maybe $6 on a book, but not 60 grand on a car. Jupiter in Pisces at these later degrees is all about this, not letting your emotions get the best of you. Then on the 26th, we got the Moon square Chiron. So watch for a little mini pop quiz on how well you're healing your mind, your consciousness, your state of being, your sense of self. On the 27th, we've got the Moon conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. So watch your temper, watch out for violence. Also look for opportunities for transformation in the career and your occupation. Besides that, we also have Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius sextiling Saturn in Aquarius. So you may find now it's a good time to align yourself with society, or now it's a good time to figure out how to do that if you were having problems with it earlier in the month when we had all of that Scorpio activity. The 28th, Moon conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, so you might find that your fears are blown out of proportion, or maybe certain pieces of your worldview are based on distorted emotions or distorted fears. On the 30th, we have the Moon in Pisces squaring the Sun in Sagittarius, so watch for conflicts, specifically spiritual and psychic ones. And on the whole of the month, which I teased earlier, we've got Mars retrograde in Gemini. When Mars is retrograde, it's a good time to reassess where we put our energy and why. It's also a good time to reassess how we view the masculine side of divinity. And I really don't give a shit what your view is, but if you believe in a divinity, it has a female and a masculine side. Are you living in line with the masculine side of divinity? And this could also apply to sexuality too, curious ideas having to do with that as well. This is also a good time this whole month with Mars retrograde in Gemini to reevaluate your personal relationships and who you spend your time with. Anyway, that about sums it up. It's a little bit longer video this time, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Adam Knox and the Cult of You for the platform and the behind the scenes neuro magic to make it work. Daily horoscopes are still up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Patreon's rolling along. If you haven't seen the adverts recently for the Bishop's Library project on my YouTube channel, you might want to check that out. And until we chat again next month, may we all receive blessings of good health, prosperity, and success as we move forward in the next month of our lives. Om Ha!